And so I'm on a mission to elevate the tech industry by elevating women. And you know what I've learned? Elevating women is not as simple as having more girls doing STEM at school. That's what we're talking about most of the time in society. And honestly, that is not enough. It is not sufficient. There are so many blockers, and that's what I'm here to change. And so that's my passion.
It is one of the most comprehensive studies ever conducted on gender-based inequalities in the UK tech industry to date. It revealed that 72% of women in tech roles have experienced at least one form of gender-based discrimination at work, and 43% of women in the tech sector think about leaving their role at least once a week.
And this is where my work really comes in, because the fact that we've got so many women leaving the workforce, they're highly educated, they're highly able. It is a cost to the workforce that talent leaves. It's really bad news for us as a species.
This trend that seems to be taking hold of the industry, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called the tech bro or tech bros.
Oh, this has been around. It's in many, many tech companies. It's the operating system of the company, if you like. It's the hustle culture. It's the you screw each other over to get ahead. You don't help each other. It's about the back doors that get promotions. When we then do become assertive, so the classic is we're told as women, you've got to be more assertive. And then when we are assertive, we're told we're aggressive.
The fragile burnout that happens when you are the only woman in the room. Do you mind elaborating on what you meant by this fragile burnout?
The women who leave the industry, I would argue most of them, a very high percentage, it's actually burnout that's caused it. It is a subtle undertone of, I don't want to go to work today. I'm tired. I don't love this. Why am I doing this? When you are just tired, you have a week's vacation and you're still tired. That's what we're talking about. The reason this happens is if you think you're experiencing burnout, go get help. You don't have to do it alone. You really don't. But don't wait until you need a year off work to recover or you exit stage left from the entire industry. As soon as you've experienced something like this the first time, where you've experienced explicit discrimination, you've been shouted down, you've been made to cry. I've experienced all of that. I've had tears. I've had, and I actually had somebody say to me at some point, you need to report this to HR. And I was like, I can't report this to HR. So that's the main thing I would ask of men. If you're listening to this and you've thought, gosh, really this is going on, then you are one of the people who can change the culture. If you're listening to this and probably stop 5 minutes in because you disagree, I'm not the person that's going to convince you to change. But if you've listened to this and thought, really, this is still happening? Yes, it is. Go and watch your workplace and see what's going on.
Hello and welcome back. Our guest today is Dr. Toni Collis. Dr. Collis is an executive and leadership coach for women in tech. She joins us today to discuss a rather sensitive topic, a topic that's seldom discussed in tech spaces that matter. It is the topic of gender biases in tech workplaces. And I'm particularly pleased to have just the right person today to bring much needed light to this delicate subject. Without much ado, let's speak to the guest and star of the show herself. Hello, Dr. Collis. I'm very happy to have you here today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me here today. This is a topic dear to my heart, so I'm happy to be here.
Dr. Collis, maybe we start from the very beginning. Some watching this might not be very familiar with who you are or what it is you do. Could you enlighten us? Could you tell us what keeps you busy on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm an executive coach, as you said, for women in tech, and it is my passion. It is the core of what I do, who I am. I started off as a woman in tech myself, with a career in supercomputing, being a software engineer, working my way up to the executive table. And that entire time, I felt very lonely at times. Even though I had women around me, I still felt quite lonely. I felt unheard. I wasn't taken seriously. I was told I was unpromotable, all the things. I've made all the mistakes, all of the mistakes. And I realized quite early on, I have an innate sense of what makes a great leader. And I was so frustrated by, one, my journey and how lonely it was. But two, the fact that so much of the leadership in tech is not good, that it actually fundamentally damages business decisions. And I was like, I need to do something. So I ended up being an executive coach precisely because I truly believe the tech industry can save the human race from its own issues. That's a whole other conversation, right? The tech industry could be the thing that helps us. And yet I think I see time and time again, tech companies making bad decisions because they don't have great leadership. And a quick win on great leadership is having diversity. We all know that diversity at the leadership table produces better profit, better ROI, better revenue, quicker times to market, all the things. The data is there. And so I'm on a mission to elevate the tech industry by elevating women. And you know what I've learned? Elevating women is not as simple as having more girls doing STEM at school. That's what we're talking about most of the time in society. And honestly, that is not enough. It is not sufficient. There are so many blockers, and that's what I'm here to change. And so that's my passion. That's why I'm here to talk to you about it today, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I completely agree. Some diversity is always important to have diversity in 100%. Tech spaces that matter.
Yeah.
It also helps with, creating product of value to a wider user base and not just to one specific demographic, right? So I completely agree. Diversity cannot be overstated. Just a little bit more on the foundations. You mentioned software engineering, that's what you did. What type of software engineering role was that specifically? And if you don't mind enlightening us on what followed after that.
Well, I was a literal hands-on keyboard girl. Show my age here. Fortran 90. I was a software applications engineer for supercomputers. So the fastest machines in the world. I had the privilege to work on some of the top 10 machines at times, writing applications that deliver scientific results. And part of me still misses that, being able to write software that is, forwarding some of the stuff around nuclear fusion reactors. I worked on wind turbine simulations, optimal placing of wind turbines so you don't get vortices and stuff like that. Climate science. My PhD, the way I got started was on simulating molecules in the human body for having molecular docking, which today is what we're doing to get design in medicine. I was one of the people that started in that field back when it wasn't a known thing. I mean, that's the kind of software I've just always loved writing. There's applications that allow us to do game-changing science. So I was very much an applications software engineer rather than a middleware or hardware. And the road I had was based on that background. So my role as an executive was in a company that was delivering the ability to use supercomputers to a bigger audience. It was all about democratizing access to supercomputing so we can do more science. And it was solutions that provided that. And I was brought in as the expert who could help understand the people like me, the tools that we needed in order to deliver on that. So that was my tech journey from straight out of my PhD all the way up to that executive table before I then reinvented myself as an executive coach because I realized that was what I was doing as a side hustle and love it.
Remarkable. Was there maybe a particular event, something memorable, a defining moment that made you pivot and say, hey, henceforth, I would rather go help people in need of such support, to mentor particularly women in need of this support?
Probably multiple experiences. There were a couple that really stood out to me. I mean, early on, I remember going to a conference. It was 300. I counted because I was just like, I felt so weird. I counted how many people were in the room. There were 300. There were 3 women, me, my boss who was on stage chairing the session, and the speaker. 3 women out of 300, 1%. And I sat there thinking, and we were talking about the future of supercomputing. At that point, exascale was the buzzword. We were like, how do we get to exascale? We're there now. This is old. I'm showing my age. I was thinking to myself, why are women not involved in this conversation? Women need to be here. This is the future of this industry. And this is the future of scientific discovery. And it made me kind of angry that women weren't there. And I couldn't tell you why they weren't there, but they weren't there. That was my first pivotal moment. I then set up a group, what I thought was going to be this tiny little group of women where I am in Scotland, called Women in Supercomputing, Women in High Performance Computing. It went global in 12 months. By the time I stepped down 7 years later, we were across 35 countries. It was desired, it was needed, it was a support network for women who are often the only woman in the room. And there's so many stories about not being heard, not being taken seriously, subtle biases against them that meant that they weren't heard, that they weren't respected. And then the thing that really did it for me was being told I was unpromotable. I was doing the job that I was asking for, but I was told I was not promotable because I wasn't, quote, technical enough. And that, I had so much imposter syndrome, I still do, that I was like, oh gosh, okay, right. It did light a fire under me because I knew I wasn't going anywhere there, so I did leave. But when I left, they always do a speech when you leave, and I was told I was their best Fortran program. And I'm thinking, wait, hold on. I was told I wasn't technical enough to get promoted for a job I was already doing. And then I started having these conversations with women, and this is happening time and time and time again. And I was like, I have to do something about this. And so I was mentoring and coaching women as a side hustle, and then eventually realized this is my passion. I have to do this. I have to change the world. I can't change the world by just bringing one technology in at a time, but I can change the world by helping women bring in thousands of bits of technology by getting a voice.
Interesting mission you're on. A revolution.
Yeah.
Subtle, but a revolution nonetheless, with significant potential to make some meaningful change.
I hope so. I really hope so, yeah.
Amazing. Interestingly, there is data that underpins the theme of our discussion today. Mm-hmm. It is one of the most comprehensive studies ever conducted on gender-based inequalities in the UK tech industry to date. The study, titled Addressing the Gender Gap in Tech, was released in 2023 by the Fawcett Society in partnership with Virgin Media O2. It was based on a sample size of over 2,000 women and men working in tech roles. It revealed that 72% of women in tech roles have experienced at least one form of gender-based discrimination at work, and 43% of women in the tech sector think about leaving their role at least once a week. Now, this result has other disturbing data, which I will not be divulging on this podcast, but I would encourage the listeners to go look up the report. It's really eye-opening, at least it was for me. Mm-hmm. It also has some other information, like you get to see that a significantly large contingent of the industry does not even agree that such form of discrimination is taking place. But the report contains all data on all of that. It also shows that there's quite a large number of women who are leaving the industry because they do not feel they are fairly treated by the system. So yeah, this is some concerning results, and I think it rightfully deserves to serve as the premise for our episode today. Mm-hmm. Dr. Collis, I don't know what you make of these stats, these concerning stats. What could be the underlying reason why such discrimination? I know it's not an easy question, but why would such bias exist in a tech space, an industry that's dedicated to building products and helping to create convenience for humanity? Why would such targeted bias exist and then also be targeted particularly to one gender?
Yeah. This is a hard question to answer, and I think it's very important that we acknowledge that the data backs this up, and then we've got to figure out how to solve it. I think it's very uncomfortable making, right? The one thing I really want to state first up is it's nobody's fault. And I think it's so easy to get really angry, and I've certainly been in that place and got very angry about the situation. I think one of the reasons why a lot of people don't see it is because it's different than it was 20 years ago. I think there was explicit bias 20 years ago. And I think we've, maybe naively on my part, I like to think we've got rid of most of our explicit bias in our society, most of Western culture. It is coming back. Some of our politics is enabling explicit bias particularly against ethnic minorities, but also against women. We're seeing it in healthcare and all that kind of stuff. And so it is going to permeate into the workforce as well. But in general, I think one of the reasons we don't want to acknowledge this is because explicit bias has gone away. What our parents experience isn't what's happening. Also, there's a lot of explicit enablement of young girls. There's all this work to get girls into STEM. It's not entirely working, but I think that makes some people a little bit angry. Like, are we getting this leg up as young girls? Why is it not coming through? And this is where my work really comes in, because the fact that we've got so many women leaving the workforce, they're highly educated, they're highly able. It is a cost to the workforce that talent leaves. It's really bad news for us as a species. We've invested that much in their education, in their training, in their knowledge, and then they're leaving. So it's bad news. So I hope everybody accepts that this is a problem. We then get to talk about the why, which is what you actually asked me, but I always like to set that context. The why is the bit that's really hard and complicated. And first of all, I think it's really important to acknowledge every human has unconscious bias. That isn't an excuse for unconscious bias, but it is a fact that we need to acknowledge. So the idea that we aren't biased against each other is, quite frankly, BS. Excuse my language. Like, we've got to accept that there's bias because it is the human condition. That doesn't justify it, but what it does mean is that we need to do something about it. I would say one of the worst things that happened to me was actually done by another woman.
Oh.
Women are biased against women in the workforce.
What exactly happened in this particular scenario, if you don't mind sharing with the listeners?
I don't want to go into it too much because I don't think it's fair on the individual involved, but one of the people that's really shut down my career at one point was female. And I think that I can look at it now rationally. I understand what happened at the time. It was horrific. That doesn't mean I've not had bad experiences with men as well. I have, but the worst one was a woman. Women, and by the way, if you ever do an unconscious bias self-assessment, which I encourage everybody to do at least once a year, you will find out where your biases are. And I work in this field. It is my passion. It is my joy. I do the unconscious bias assessment. I still come out mildly after all these years of all this work. It's got less over time, but I am mildly biased against women despite this. That blows my mind. But what we can do is adjust. So the first thing is accept this unconscious bias against the minority groups. Anybody who doesn't look like the majority, you're going to have unconscious bias against you, and you're going to have unconscious bias against other people like that as well, who look like you, because you're not the majority. So that's piece number one. That is very real. It's not going anywhere. But that's not where it stops. It's then also what's going on. So the unconscious bias means we're treated differently. We know we're less likely to be mentored as women. And I think that's just a genuine, we like to mentor people that are like us. A lot of women will tell me, I love to mentor women. And I'm like, great, go girl. Just make sure it doesn't take away from your career too much. But yeah, go for it. If your majority is male, you're going to be mentoring more men. And in addition, the men are not going to be wanting to mentor women as much. And when they do, what we find is women tend to be told what to do, given feedback more than they're told what they're doing right. So the mentoring is not very helpful. There is less advocacy. I think a good mentor is an advocate and a mentor. Women are less likely to be advocated for, more likely to just be mentored and told what's not going right for them. So that's the second piece. The third piece is us as women, and this can come across as victim blaming, and that is not my intent here. But we've got to accept, as women, we've been indoctrinated since birth in Western culture to be nice, to be seen and not heard, to look pretty. That's more important than your technical knowledge when you're a little girl. To make everybody comfortable and not start arguments. And you walk into a tech executive room and the culture can be quite tough. And if you're surrounded by argumentative women and you're indoctrinated as a woman to make everybody, there's all these men who are quite intense, and you're indoctrinated as a woman your entire life to not start arguments, to make everybody smile. It is so hard to assert yourself. So hard. So you've got an entire history of indoctrination and operate a specific way as a woman, and then you're thrown in a fire. And then the hard but important piece is when we then do become assertive. So the classic is we're told as women, you've got to be more assertive. And then when we are assertive, we're told we're aggressive. And you see a lot of stuff online from women going, oh, for goodness sake, this is so unfair. We're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. That's an oversimplification, which I really want to call out. One of the things I have so many conversations with women about is they finally get the courage to be assertive. And it's a really big deal. It's a huge deal to stand up to this room full of really grumpy men. That's what it feels like anyway. To stand their ground, to give their opinion after years of being told, be seen but not heard, be happy, smiley, fetch the coffee, write the notes, make everybody happy. They finally get there. By the time they get there, they're simultaneously terrified and seriously angry. What that does is your IQ literally drops. Literally, your IQ will drop if you've got all that anger, resentment, and panic all at the same time. So when you do eventually get assertive, you probably are being aggressive because it just comes out. But then we get told we're aggressive and we go, that's unfair, and we stop listening to feedback. And it is, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't, but we've got to own some of this, not because we're broken in any way, but because culture has put us in this awful position and we're the only ones that can lift ourselves out of it. So if you sit in that place of being angry and say, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't, it's not my fault, I'm going to exit stage left. I want to tell you, please don't give up. Because if you do a couple of months of work on this, bring down your cortisol levels from your anger and frustration and panic, you can start being taken seriously. But I think so many of us don't do that work because you know what? Men don't have to do that work. And it is damn unfair. So some of this is on us. It's not justified that it's on us. And I really want women to hear that. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying there is something else you can do that is within your control. So please don't give up. And that bit's just not talked about enough, in my opinion.
And also, I would like to caveat this to all the listeners that this is not necessarily a discussion about men versus women. Far from it.
No, it's not. God, no. It's just as an oversimplification. Absolutely.
This is very much a tech issue, one that just deserves to be discussed. You know, if we are to understand the nature of a problem, we need to discuss it more, you know, hear all sides so that we can better tackle it properly.
100%. Yeah. Just to chime in there on that point, the reason this work is so important is because everybody's perspective matters. But if you're the quiet one in the room, and this is the bit where it's about us as individuals, I've had women tell me they were asked to speak up and they didn't. And what I'm asserting to you here is we need you to speak up. The technology needs you to speak up. Whatever flavor of human you are, in fact, we need your perspective. Please speak up. That's what I'm really asking, I guess.
I couldn't agree more. You know that whole a tree falls in the forest adage?
Yeah.
So yes, I've always been a huge proponent of self-advocacy. It's just good habit for career development. So yes, good point. You know, I think one of the reasons why this discrimination might be so prevalent across different parts of the industry is many people just cannot identify the discrimination when it happens. It might be happening right before the very eyes of many people, but they will not be able to recognize, you know, they wouldn't know what shape it takes. That reminds me of, I came across a writing somewhere you wrote in one of your publications, the fragile burnout that happens when you are the only woman in the room. Do you mind elaborating on what you meant by this fragile burnout? And also maybe if you could throw in one or two examples of these challenges, some of the women maybe that you have coached have had to deal with, just so that we can, maybe the listeners or the viewers can be informed on what shape such challenges take.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think just to start with the example, actually, an example I think so many of us will understand is the women who leave the industry. I would argue most of them, I couldn't give you a percentage, but a very high percentage, It's actually burnout that's caused it. It is this subtle undertone of, I don't want to go to work today. I'm tired. I don't love this. Why am I doing this? Rather than, we all have days when we don't want to go to work, but we have days when we go, oh, I love it. I'm changing the world here. It's hard today, but I'm changing the world. I'm doing something great. When that goes, that's this subtle undertone burnout. When you are just tired, you have a week's vacation and you're still tired. That's what we're talking about. The reason this happens is whatever group, and I focus on women. That is my speciality. That's what I spent my time learning about. But it actually applies. This particular instance applies to anybody who feels different. And the feeling different, actually, interestingly, is very subtle. I have a number of women, and I was one of these as well, who I've been the only woman in the room since I was 16, and I started choosing science and electronics at school. And I was very used to just being surrounded by lads. I basically only had male friends for a long time. And so I didn't realize I wasn't comfortable until I went to a WomenInSTEM conference when I was at university. And I walked into that room and I thought, wow, this feels awesome. I felt different. I fundamentally felt different. I felt less judged. I felt like I could just laugh the way I laugh. I didn't panic when I raised my hands. I'm an opinionated person. I've always raised my hand, but I've been shut down a lot in my life. And there were points in my life where I stopped raising my hand for several years because of that. I had a job where somebody commented on wearing a skirt and they all stood up when I walked in the room. I didn't wear a skirt or a dress for 2 years. That cognitive load of don't wear a dress to work. Should I speak up? Should I not speak up? What if they think I'm stupid? Am I actually any good at this? That is a cognitive load on you every single day, and it's there. And it's that belonging piece. We talk about DEIB and be belonging, and everybody in the workplace needs to belong. If you don't belong, if you don't feel that you can bring yourself to work, if you're putting on that mask in the morning, which I know also applies to neurodivergence, which is a whole other topic here, but women are far more likely to put on a literal mask. This is not who I am when they show up at work. Because if they show up as themselves, talk about the things that matter to them, the men will be talking about beer and football and pubs. I mean, again, massive oversimplification here, generalizations. But if the women can't join in that conversation, or they can't have their own conversation when they're socialite, I mean, I never went to a coffee room because I didn't feel like I didn't have anything in common with them. And so I never took coffee breaks. I just worked through my lunch and my coffee breaks. It all adds up to a lower confidence. Because, those coffee breaks, they build rapport, they build respect, they build just camaraderie, which means when you are in the technical discussion, there's a little bit of heat. You feel safer. But if you're not feeling safe enough to go to the coffee room, you're not safe enough to speak up when it's heated. And that's what I think really underpins a so gradual burnout and is a huge cause of us leaving the workforce.
And that reminds me of this trend that seems to be taking hold of the industry. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called the tech bro, or tech bros.
Oh, this has been around.
Is it something you're familiar with? And maybe you want to enlighten us?
I don't know the resurface of it. Maybe it's different. What you're talking about is subtly different, but certainly the bro culture is something I've talked about my entire career. It's in many, many tech companies. It's the operating system of the company, if you like, but not the the financial operating system or anything like that. It's the culture. It's the culture. It's the hustle culture. It's the you must do more to get ahead. You screw each other over to get ahead. You don't help each other. It's about the back doors that get promotions. It's the intensity. So I've got a client right now, for example, who is dealing with a colleague who definitely epitomizes difficult. My client's got a team of 200 engineers under her, right? She's an extraordinary leader. She's been told by her boss, she was told to hire somebody, and then her boss says, no, you're just going to use this person. That was the first indicator of this culture being a problem. She was told she was going to hire, and then this person was just put in there. She was told he's your peer. She was told he is going to lead this initiative, even though she's going to be responsible for its failure if it fails. So many of her team are saying, this guy doesn't listen to us. He jumps in halfway through, which I'm a jumper inner. You probably notice this. I have ideas. I want to say it. it is a weakness in us. But this guy will just shut down the conversation. He'll jump to conclusions and shut it down and then finish the meeting. And he's doing it over and over. That's an individual, but then it's enabled by the boss going, but we need him. He's a super person. He's a superstar. And that's the bro culture saying this behavior of an individual is allowed because it's more important than the team. That's been around for decades. Tech has really facilitated it. I think it's in every industry. It is very prevalent in tech, though. And I think it's one of the things that's really kept women out of tech.
The website I read about this tech bro culture from, it portrays something slightly more malicious than the bro culture you have just described. It seems to exist for the sole purpose, maybe deliberately or not, I'm not sure, but it ends up ostracizing everyone else who doesn't fit a particular mold. And while women may occasionally feel the brunt of it, it's not. It also impacts other groups as well. It could be anything, from your educational background, the color of your skin, right? What languages you speak, your religion, whatever it is that sets you aside, ends up leaving you excommunicated from this secret clique. And it's not something that's easy to detect either, because it's in the small things. You really have to be looking to be able to detect such bias. It could be anything from, important information regarding tasks with high visibility, for instance, or information about promotions tend to just circulate amongst the members of that clique. And sometimes they could, deliberately use some tech jargon or, some banter or some jokes that could make another gender uncomfortable. I don't want to be too explicit, but
I think we know what that is, though, don't we? We've all experienced that.
I was just surprised a bit to know that this has become a thing. It's something that's so widespread and so common that it has even gotten a popular name.
Oh, it's had a name for 20, 30 years. It really has. It started with in tech, it started with the dot-com boom, definitely. And particularly the dot-com boom, the Silicon Valley, male entrepreneurs ostracizing the other people in the company. So what I would say, just to challenge your narrative there, and maybe what you're repeating is a narrative of that article, which I haven't read, I would not say it's necessarily deliberate. I think that gives this whole thing agency. I think it's a manifestation of human behavior that's then not challenged and changed. I don't think that, and again, maybe I'm naive, maybe I think the best of the human race, but I don't think many people, there are some, and they do tend to rise to the top, unfortunately, but I don't think the majority of the human race genuinely goes out to make women's lives difficult. I think the behavior is enabled and not challenged. And the outcome is ostracization. And if you are different in any form, female or otherwise, whatever it is that makes you different, you are not allowed into that clique. But that clique happens because there's a group of people together, and this is humans working. This is human psychology. Like we meet a group of people that are like us, and we like to form cliques. It's what we do. And I'll just say, women do this. We'll sit in a bar, we'll form a little group of women, and we exclude the men around us because we're talking about things that men are not interested in, right? So we all do this. The problem is when we do it in the workplace, it is to the detriment of the workforce. And the workplace has to be successful, the workplace needs to be inclusive, needs to hear all opinions, needs to recognize you've got extraordinary talent over here, but just because they don't look like you doesn't mean they're not talented. You're wasting this talent by not involving that human in the conversations and the decision-making, influencing strategy. And worse than that, you're burning them out because it's so frustrating. Sitting there going, I can see that tidal wave approaching that none of you are paying attention to because I have a different lived perspective. I see things you don't. Can you not see that train approaching? Hello, that causes its own form of burnout. Knowing that you can see something, but nobody wants to hear you, it's so painful. And that to me is bro culture right there. Like, it's just not listening.
And on multiple occasions, I have had the concern that there are just few women in leadership positions in tech. And to that, I always reference the fact that globally, there are way fewer women in tech than there are men. The data shows that on average, you've got 27.6% of tech workers globally are women. The rest are men. So I would think this should account for having lesser,
but then
fewer women in certain positions across the tech industry. Would you agree?
But it's not that. That's not the issue, because otherwise we'd have 27% the whole way up, and we don't. I don't know what the current numbers are. Apologies for that. I should have looked that up for you, but I don't know what the current numbers are. But certainly not that many years ago, I think there was like one female executive in the Fortune 50, one female CEO. Certainly female leaders in tech, it's something like 10%. It's way below that 27%. And it isn't just a pipeline problem that these women are going to grow up and get there. We've had 25%-ish coming up through. But, you said yourself early on that women are leaving the workforce faster than men. Why are they leaving? Well, one, the effect of them leaving is that means they're not getting to those senior positions. They're leaving, and before they get to those senior positions, and even if they are, they're leaving faster than men. So of course there's a difference. Exactly. One of the main reasons they leave is because they're not getting promoted. So it is not that there's fewer women that's the problem. That is part of the problem, but it is not the biggest problem. I always say to people, there's no point in shoving water down your water pipes if you're losing 90% of it before it gets to the house. That's what we're doing. We're shoving women and girls into STEM, but not then supporting them and dealing with the problem of the leaky pipeline. It drives me nuts, this, because as you can tell, I'm quite passionate about it, because we have to support these women. We are losing so much talent.
I admit it's not an easy problem to fix. Nonetheless, Dr. Collis, for the remainder of this show, I would like us to maybe focus on a solution. Let's play pretend, if we may, right? Let's say, for instance, you have this magic wand, and with the magic wand, the flick of your wand, you can fix this problem for everybody. What would you do straight away if you had this power?
Okay. I think this comes down to the problem that I mentioned at the beginning. You need a three-pronged approach. You need to deal with the unconscious bias and the culture that comes with that, the enablement of culture. And then you actually need to also support the women. And you need to support women in two ways. And I hope the ideal would be that this is the last time these women need to be supported, because the culture should support them. The problem, as I mentioned at the beginning, is we've had a lifetime of cultural indoctrination that's in hindering us, and lack of useful mentorship and advocacy. So we're fixing it for women. Ideally, if we sorted this out, the next generation doesn't need fixing. And I hate the phrase fixing. It makes it sound like women are broken. We are a little bit. I never used to like saying that, but we are. Society has told us to be seen and not heard and be liked, and it hurts. So we are a little bit. I don't like saying that, but maybe we have to accept it. So you need a three-pronged approach. So the first one's culture. I'd want to go in there, and we've tried to do this, and society is now having a bit of a backlash against going in and doing DEI training or anything like this. But you know what? Every single CEO needs to understand the power of culture, needs to understand the cost of not investing in culture, needs to understand that every person that leaves and joins changes culture. Every people are culture, and a culture is also enabled or disabled. So if you, as a leader, see something you don't like and don't challenge it because and I challenge women about this, the ladies I work with, they'll have a challenging colleague and I'm like, so what did you do about that? And we're like, well, nothing, because it's just one instance. I'm like, no. You've just enabled toxicity right there. One of my clients just this week was telling me she's got somebody who keeps complaining to her team about stuff in such a way that the whole team is now complaining, and it's about a third-party vendor. It's something that's just not going to change. But what it's doing is just dragging down the morale of the whole team. And she was like, I don't want to do anything about it. He's not my direct report. And I was like, well, are you, who is his manager? Well, one of my peers. I was like, you have to tackle this. If you don't, you are enabling toxicity right there. So we have to have, every single leader has to have responsibility for culture. That's the first thing. Then we have to talk about women. We have to give them advocates. We have to train people to see their unconscious bias and why they're not advocating for the women around them. And I mean women here as much, and men here advocating for women, not just men advocating for women, but all of us advocating for women. And by the way, that applies to every underrepresented group. I'm just focusing in on women. Advocates is the next piece. And then the third piece here is women themselves, helping to undo that indoctrination of a lifetime of not speaking up. Recognizing whether or not you do have imposter syndrome. And I think a lot of us don't like that phraseology anymore, but do you procrastinate because it needs to be perfect? Do you feel like you have to do it on your own? Be a bit of a superwoman? Do you feel like you're the genius and therefore like it's all yours and you can't delegate it to your team? Imposter syndrome isn't just this, I don't feel like I belong here, which I think is what many of us have thought it is. It's those subtle undercurrents of behavior that stop us taking the right action, stop us speaking strategically, but instead we're firefighting and super busy because we don't know how to step away from it, because we've been rewarded our entire careers for being the person who makes everybody happy. We fix the problems. We've got to retrain this whole generation of women who've not had the same exposure that men do. Men are mentored early on to step away from the firefighting and be more strategic. Women just don't get that mentoring. Men are, but women don't get that.
Some men.
Well, some men. Yeah, okay, fair enough. But women, we need to train the women to be able to do that too, because they've just not been given that in the same way. So we need to level the opportunities. That's a huge project. I do it on an individual basis, but hey, if anybody wants to go out there and change the world, let's do it.
Speaking about imposter syndrome, Dr. Collis, would you have some practical advice for women to better handle this problem in workplaces?
Oh yeah, so it's a really, imposter syndrome is a huge topic in its own right, and I spend months with people working on this, just actually months even getting them to accept that they are living in a space of hindering their own behavior because of their self-belief. So there's no fixed short answer. Well, I will say, I'm talking massive generalizations. On average, if you have bell curves, more women are experiencing the stuff I'm talking about than men, but they're overlapping bell curves. Everything I do, I have coached men through as well, because they do have the same experience. And again, it comes down to like just being different, treated differently, all that kind of stuff. So with imposter syndrome, there is no one size fits all. There is no magic wand that's going to let you let go of it. What I would say is it's about understanding our own personal experience, our own toolkit that helps with that experience. So I, for one, I still have imposter syndrome pretty much on a daily basis. I'm like, really? Am I good at what I do? Why do people take me seriously? Did I really have a good career? All the things. What I now have, though, is a toolkit that allows me to challenge it. I've also found over the time that my self-doubt changes, where I'm doubting my capabilities, where I'm doubting, like, should I speak up here? Do I have a voice here? Do I have something useful to offer? That self-doubt has changed over time. And what I really think is, one, you've got to recognize where that every human has self-doubt. It's normal. It's what you then do with it. And so you've got to, first of all, diagnose what's really going on. And that just takes a lot of discovery and introspection and acceptance that there's nothing wrong with self-doubt and low confidence. There's nothing wrong. But as soon as you say, that's not me, I'm sorry, but I just don't believe you, because every human experiences this at some point. Every human. And then once you have diagnosed what's going on, you then need to put in place your toolkit. And one of the best things you can do is to say, once you've figured out what's going on, you say, I'm here because up until this point, that's what I've needed. I've needed to stay in this place because it's felt safe. It's got me success up until this point, but now I need to let it go. And you have to consciously choose to step away from I'm safe here to discomfort. A lot of the behaviors that are holding us up, they're unconscious actions. I'm just going to behave this way. I'm just going to not delegate this. We don't think it through. We just behave. What we have to do to counteract it is slow our thinking down, make conscious choices. 99% of the thinking we do every day is unconscious, it's autopilot. You pick a box of cereal off the shelf at the supermarket, you don't know which of the 30 things do I choose. You just don't do that. Most of what we do, when you're telling your team, I'm going to get you to do this. I'm going to get you to do this. You don't think really hard about why. You just delegate. I'm saying, understand what's going on and slow down on the thing that you've decided you're going to tackle in your behavior. Pause. Be kind to yourself, and then say, I'm going to get uncomfortable and I'm going to do this thing that I know is uncomfortable to me. And then you're going to reflect afterwards and be like, oh, actually, am I right? The world didn't end. You have to do that reflection. I think so many people skip the step of reflection because the reflection is what retrains your brain and says, oh, look, actually, that isn't so bad. And we can let go of the low confidence in that area. If you don't reflect, you don't let go of it.
Like that. I like that. As we come to the end of the show, Dr. Collis, I would like us to share some career development nuggets with the listeners. Let's say, for instance, a lady watching this who is just starting out in the tech industry. Knowing all you know, right, with the time you have spent in the industry, what advice can you dish out to this lady to help her navigate her way successfully through the industry and to achieve some form of fulfillment and achieve whatever career goal she has planned for herself?
Recognize you don't need more mentors. I think there's this whole big thing of like women need mentors. You don't need more mentors. We get too much of that. First, that's the first thing. Secondly, be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up for not fitting in. Don't beat yourself up for not standing up for yourself. Don't beat yourself up for like not doing X, Y, Z. Be kind. I think there's so much pressure on you as a woman. You just need to be kind to yourself. And I think we beat ourselves up even more than the rest of society is beating ourselves up. So be kind. That gives you resilience to then take uncomfortable action. And get used to feedback is the next one. And don't take the feedback too personally. I always say to clients, like, I'm a coach. My job is to coach you, but you need feedback. But what you need to do with the feedback is be able to be discerning, not dismissive. It isn't about going, I just disagree with you, you know, and I think we get so much negative critical feedback that you can get very dismissive of it. But the best way to grow is to get the feedback from multiple sources, filter through it and say, what are the patterns that are relevant here? Is there any truth? There's going to be a lot of things which are to do with just people's perceptions of you. Those perceptions are there for a reason. Is there something we need to do about it? But get used to holding space for feedback. Don't get defensive. It's so hard to do, so easy to say, but so hard to do. Get used to that feedback because that feedback is gold, and that feedback is what's going to allow you to understand where you're being held up, why you're not getting ahead. And then the third thing is, if you think you're experiencing burnout, go get help. You don't have to do it alone. You really don't. But don't wait until you need a year off work to recover or you exit stage left from the entire industry. If you are finding you're struggling, 9 days out of 10 to go to work, if you're just not rejuvenated after the weekend, if you're just tired all the time, if you have no passion for what you're doing, get help now before we lose you. There is a job out there for you in tech, so please let somebody help you rather than us losing you.
And on the flip side, what advice would you give to, let's call them the male allies, the men who are in the industry and recognize that indeed there is a problem? What advice would you share with them so that they can either help solve the problem or at least not contribute to making it any worse?
Yeah, I would definitely say with young men coming into the industry, they've grown up with women having voices. They've grown up with powerful women in the media, so they shouldn't be afraid of us. What I would say is don't give in to mimicking the men around you who are older. We look at role models, we look at people who look like us years ahead. Again, one of the reasons why we don't have role models, we don't have women that look like us further up the chain, so we don't have a role model. Please, if you are coming in and you believe women have a place in the workplace, watch the culture. Watch the culture. Don't just mimic it. Ask yourself, why are people doing that? Don't fall into the gossip. Don't fall into the clique. Ask yourself, why the hell are people being treated that way if I don't disagree with it? It's so easy to just gradually move into a culture because you fit. And humans want to fit in. It's safe to fit in. We get protected by fitting in. It's an evolutionary trait. But while we fit in, we're not changing the culture. So that's the main thing I would ask of men. If you're listening to this and you've thought, gosh, really this is going on, then you are one of the people who can change the culture. If you're listening to this and probably stop 5 minutes in because you disagree, I'm not the person that's going to convince you to change. But if you've listened to this and thought, really, this is still happening? Yes, it is. Go and watch your workplace and see what's going on. And stop lecturing women on what to do. We all mansplain. Just stop. Like, we don't. The worst thing for me is a man telling me how to fix it. They might have an element of truth in it, but you know what? After years of being told what to do by men, I am not going to listen to a man. So please stop telling us how to fix the situation.
I guess unless it's work related, right? I mean, if some knowledge transfer is required to get some job done, then in that scenario, I guess it's cool.
So yeah, that's my advice.
If I may add my 2 cents, addressing particularly the leaders, the male leaders in the tech industry, it doesn't hurt to always hear both sides of the coin, right? Both men and women, if for nothing, at least to be able to make better informed decisions. You cannot solve a problem that you do not agree exists, and you can't even describe a problem unless you listen, right? Mm-hmm. There is a saying, a problem described is a problem half solved. And when an employee finally garners the courage to report harassment, some leaders, oblivious to the ugly prejudice and bullying within their own team, can be quick to shut it down, saying discrimination or sexism doesn't exist here. These are the leaders that need this message the most.
I think the very statement of it doesn't exist here is toxicity. Right there. That is exactly what I'm talking about. It's saying it can't possibly exist here. Every human does this to another human. So as soon as I hear somebody say it doesn't exist here, I'm like, dude, you are part of the problem. It isn't the security guy at the gate. It's you right there. It's you. It's you. It's you. It's you. It's you. It's you.
Dr. Collis, the next question is a tradition on this podcast. Can you share with us the biggest or most significant or most impactful mistake you've ever made along your career journey?
That's a really challenging one. I mean, here's the thing. I truly believe I've made no mistakes. That sounds quite arrogant, but here's what I mean by that. I have learned so much, and so I wouldn't undo any of it because I wouldn't be here today, and I think I'm doing great things. I truly believe I'm having a positive impact on the world, and I'm only doing that because of the mistakes I made. So with that caveat, I think the biggest one was allowing people to control my feelings. Every criticism was so personal to me. Every comment was painful. I think it's part of my human condition. I'm quite an empathetic human, and I would really let it get under my skin. And for so many years, it controlled my behavior, and sometimes in not good ways. I protect myself and potentially not do good things for other people because I was so afraid of being hurt by somebody else's language. I would say it was pervasive for years and years and years until I learned what people say doesn't control who I am. It's such a grandiose thing to say, but I had to learn that. And I do think it held me up in my career. But you know what? It gives me so much empathy today for the women I work with who are still experiencing that. I think it's very, very common. And it's about undoing that indoctrination again of everybody. It's really painful to think that people don't like you, or really painful to think that people don't respect you, but that shouldn't control your behavior.
Dr. Collis, where can people find you online for anyone that's looking?
Thank you. You can find me at tonicollis.com. That's my website. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm Toni Collis on LinkedIn. I love hearing from people. So if in doubt, connect with me on LinkedIn. I want to build this community, both of women, but also men who get this conversation. So please, if in doubt, reach out, connect.
Just reflecting on everything you have shared here today, if I was a lady watching this, I think some part of me would be conflicted as I struggle to understand how to balance between the two, right? On one side, being outspoken and always challenging the status quo of a tech system that condones the disenfranchisement of my gender, or at least doesn't combat it sufficiently enough for me to be comfortable. Always having to be on my guard, always having to be combative, always be ready for a fight on one side, right? And then on the other side, simply playing along, playing along, get paid at the end of the month for the work you have done, and then you keep it moving. Because if you're not comfortable, you do that for some time until you can eventually change jobs to a different environment with a more befitting culture that matches your goals, your ambitions. No job lasts forever, right? And there is this African saying, at the end of the day, it's not your father's house. What that means is, everyone signs a contract when they get hired.
Yeah.
And then you literally sell your time to the company. So you should be able to swallow your pride to some extent and just let things ride, let things simmer for some time until you can eventually find something that you prefer doing. How would you advise such a lady watching this to properly balance between these two extremes in such a way that at the end of the day, they come out at the top, smiling?
So this is where my advice has changed over the years as I've become less naive. Let's go with naive, shall we? Earlier on in my career, I used to say every one of us has a duty to stand up and say something. And you know what? That's incredibly naive on my part. As soon as you've experienced something like this the first time, where you've experienced explicit discrimination, you've been shouted down, you've been made to cry. I've experienced all of that. I've had tears. I've had, and I actually had somebody say to me at some point, you need to report this to HR. And I was like, I can't report this to HR. And I therefore really get when you feel that way. So here's my general recipe for advice. Take care of you first. If you don't feel safe, if you don't feel that you would be heard, if you feel like the situation would deteriorate, you've got to take care of you first. You have to. I strongly believe that now. Take care of you. If you do have a voice, speak up. But if you don't feel safe, don't. Get out. Exit stage left. Maybe, play with it. Try and do minimal stuff. Please don't engage in it. If you're planning to exit, you're just, as I say to clients, you're going to coast until we exit you. Like, we're finding you a job, you're coasting, which comes with its own level of stress, by the way, for high achievers. To coast is actually quite hard and creates its own special form of burnout. But coast, get out. That's your focus. Don't enable it anymore. But if you don't feel safe, you don't have challenge. If you feel safe, you challenge. And here's the other piece. One of the reasons I do what I do is to get women up here, because you know what, then they do have a voice. And that is one of the fastest ways for us to change. It's the more women I can get heard, can get visible, who get that seat at the table. It's not just me. There is many people doing what I'm doing. The more we can do that, the more these women can change it from the top, because you know what, they're in control. They are peers of the people doing this. And at that point, I hope they are strong enough and safe enough to make a change.
Thank you for the candid conversation today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
And on that note, we bring this episode to an end. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Until the next episode, cheers.